The Toronto Raptors are headed into this season in a precarious position. They have a new rookie head coach in Darko Rajakovic. Their all-star point guard is now in Houston. They have three key players as unrestricted free agents heading into the year, and a roster mixed with veterans ready to win now and young players that still need to focus on development. The question that remains as training camp starts in Vancouver this week is how this season will play out. Which direction will this team take? And maybe more importantly, can this team shake off the bad vibes of last year?
Masai, you cited selfishness as a reason this team struggled last season. I wonder, how does that transfer over to this season with all the changes that you guys have made this summer?
There will be no selfishness this year. I think we finished a really tough season, and with lots of decisions we had to make. Obviously we had the coaching change, and I think this was big for us to maybe bring in some new energy and start afresh. Change is good. I think as the year goes on, we will figure out, which way we are going to go in terms of how they adjust to the new coach, the new system, and how we're going to play.
I'm really excited about the roster that we have heading into the season. I really look forward to create a new identity of this team. We really want to be the team that moves the ball, that plays together, that plays unselfishly, and we're going to try to kind of divide responsibilities on the team so all the players can benefit and everybody can step up.
So in this preview, after sifting through some of the answers on Media Day, we'll try to look at what to expect for the Raptors this season. And while there is some uncertainty about who's on the roster for the entire year, even for opening night, there's a good bit to look forward to in my opinion. First and foremost, Coach Rajakovic, who has been a longtime assistant in the NBA, getting his first head coaching gig, and is looking to implement a new style to this Raptors team, one that is predicated on a 0.5 offense used to primarily promote ball and player movement. And with the mentions of selfishness last season from numerous members of the Raptors, invoking a style that is meant to bred unselfishness may help inject some new life into this team. During Media Day, Darko also mentioned that this team is going to be leaning into more pick and roll actions, working to use the pick and roll as a way to create opportunities. And that's big because this team, for the most part, was a low frequency pick and roll team, especially before Jakob Poeltl joined the squad. They were also a high frequency isolation team, and this 0.5 offense is meant to presumably eliminate some of that and help carve out advantages through cutting and ball movement. That obviously plays a big factor when you consider Pascal Siakam, who by all accounts was one of the most effective high-volume isolation scorers in the league over the last few seasons. How we adjust to this new style of play is going to be big, and ultimately, it was one of the biggest questions of Media Day as well. And as far as the whole unselfishness discourse that is permeating online, I think Masai was pretty direct in his response of how they hope to curb that selfishness through Darko, through invoking a new style, but ultimately, whether intentionally or unintentionally, he named Pascal as one of the guys that needs to play the right way. Pascal has continued to grow as a playmaker and creator, especially as he's been given more on-ball opportunities, and I think honestly, selfishness isn't something that he struggles with. In fact, I think Siakam was placed in a position where the roster construction didn't do him any favors last season. He was one of the most double-teamed players in the entire league, and with the lack of floor spacers on the team, still found a way to be successful because he was so effective in isolation situations. How much of that will change with Darko in the fold now in his new scheme is the biggest question, and how much Siakam buys into that might be the other big underlying question here. And yes, that was the biggest talking point for Media Day, especially when Masai cited Pascal himself when saying that the team needs to play the right way.
Typically players like Pascal, if you can get them on extension, 2 times All-NBA, typically in the NBA, their play style supersedes or is presented as like the utmost thing to preserve or to elevate. Darko, I'm excited to see what he implements with the team, but typically you don't see NBA teams say like, the system, we have to see how this guy works. Typically, as you say, you believe in these players. Wouldn't it make sense to go to the table immediately, say we believe in you, the extension, etc.?
Yes, and we do believe in Pascal. We do believe that a lot of our players didn't play the right way last year. and we want to see them play the right way. I said it that we were selfish. I'm not running away from that. We were selfish and we did not play the right way. So let us see it when we play the right way.
From the way things went, I think the Raptors want to take a wait-and-see approach when it comes to Pascal and implementing this new system with Darko. But with that being said, as Raptors Republic Samson Folk mentioned, it's mostly the job of the coach to adapt to the star players, not the other way around. With that being said, that sort of puts Siakam's future with the team in question, especially because he'll be a free agent this summer, looking for big money, and is extension eligible right now. And as far as I see it, I doubt that extension happens at this point. And quite frankly, I'm also kind of skeptical to see how much longer Siakam will be on this current iteration of the Raptors, because the messaging for the most part has been unclear about which direction this team wants to go and if the front office envisions a future with Siakam on the team long term. How that comes about, whether it be via trade or through free agency, I'm not sure, but I think after Media Day today, we can see that maybe things aren't as clear cut between the Raptors and Pascal Siakam moving forward. And as far as how satisfied Siakam will be with this new style that Darko will implement, that's still to be decided. And through Media Day, despite Siakam definitely being the best player on the team, it seems like there's a shift to prioritize Scottie Barnes as the sort of focal point of this team moving forward.
Definitely, I can see Scottie playing on the ball much more. We're going to be calling in half-court sets. We're going to be calling plays for him to handle it in pick and roll, to set screens in pick and roll. He's such a unique player that we can use him in many different ways. But he's going to be used quite a bit. I think there is a lot of advantages there. First of all, he's a willing passer, so when you put him in pick and rolls, he can see the court really well, and will try to move the court around pick and roll quite a bit. So actually there are open passing lanes, and I think he can be very good in pick and rolls when a small sets a pick and roll for him, as well as big Jakob or Precious or any of our bigger players on the team can set screens for him.
Through his first 2 seasons in the league, Scottie has shown genuine flashes of being a star, and his obvious standout trait is his playmaking and passing ability. And the Raptors want to double down on that by putting the ball in his hands more, whether that's as the initiator in pick and rolls, or as a screener and roller making plays in the middle of the floor, or as a sort of post playmaking hub. There's an array of ways the Raptors can make Scottie the primary creator on this team. There hasn't been as much success as you'd think through the first 2 seasons of Scottie's career as a pick and roll ball handler. Teams tend to duck under the actions, daring him to take the outside shot, or they just switch those actions, and while Scottie can punish some switches, there were mixed results as a whole because he doesn't have the quickest first step in those situations. That being said, prioritizing Scottie's development is clearly at the forefront of the Raptors' mindset this season, and while there will be bumps along the way, and the learning curve is steep, it's the right approach to a team that seems to be leaning towards a youth movement when you consider Darko's past in player development. Ultimately, Scottie is the big swing factor for this team this season. In fact, if he does take that all-star level leap that some are expecting, this team will be much better than anticipated. I still think it's likely that Scottie will take his bumps this season as he adjusts to a more defined role as the team's primary playmaker, and how quickly he adjusts to that could dictate how good this team will be. And like Siakam, who's a guy who makes most of his bread in the interior, Barnes isn't necessarily set up to thrive this season with the questionable shooting on the roster. If anything, it's likely that Barnes will go through some of the same bumps that Siakam had to go through earlier in his career as he transitioned to a more on-ball role, and especially with the added attention that defenses are going to send his way. This is primarily why I think the Raptors will likely struggle still as a half-court team, especially with the absence of Fred VanVleet, their primary pick-and-roll initiator and pull-up shooter. When you're missing that element in lineups, it creates a ripple effect that creates stagnation throughout the offense. Now, you can sell yourself on the idea that Darko's 0.5 offense, if bought into, will help create more shots and more opportunities, and in turn, maybe alleviate some of those issues. But it all comes back to shooting and floor spacing. And while Coach Rajakovic said he thinks this team has enough shooting, there are really only 4 players on the roster that can be deemed as shooters: OG Anunoby, Gary Trent Jr., Otto Porter Jr., and Grady Dick. With Anunoby, another guy who's up for a big payday and is a free agent this summer, there looms the questions about his future with this team, but as opposed to Siakam, I think there's a good chance Anunoby sticks with this roster as they move into a new phase. No player on the team might stand to benefit from Darko's style more than OG, who can space the floor on the weak side and spot up, and is an excellent cutter off the ball, and is one of the most versatile defenders all of basketball has to offer. I'm not going to rush and say Anunoby's future with this team is secure, because it isn't, but I can envision a world where the Raptors enter a new era of hoops with Scottie and OG at the helm of it all. And with VanVleet's departure, there leaves room for him to experiment on ball as a creator and expand his game too. How successful he'll be in that? Well, we'll see. The results haven't been the best in his on-ball creation reps thus far into his career, but as far as being an off-ball play finisher type, Anunoby can absolutely thrive in Darko's system. The same can be said for Trent Jr., who is a free agent as well this upcoming summer. Ideally, a player like Trent, who is a lights-out shooter, would be vital to this team, especially in the half court. But ultimately, I'm curious to see how else Gary's been able to expand his game this summer, if he's been able to improve as a playmaker, and whether, again, the new system can help promote more ball movement from him particularly. If the ball is flying around the court like it's supposed to be in Darko's system, guys like OG and Gary stand to benefit tremendously. It's just about whether there's an actual buy-in on that system. As far as the other two shooters go, Otto and Grady, these are two wild cards off of the bench that could potentially help swing the season one way or another. Porter Jr. basically missed all of last year with a toe injury, and his size and floor spacing was missed dearly. If he can be healthy this year, he enables Darko to be more fluid and creative with his lineups because of Porter's ability to space the floor as a front court player. The same thing sort of applies to Grady, who's coming in the league as a marksman. How much that translates into year one is going to be a big question. But ultimately, if he can just spot up for the Raptors, he allows them to be more flexible with their lineups this season. Now, Grady, in my opinion, adds a dynamic that Trent and Porter Jr. just can't as shooters. He's an excellent mover off of the ball. He has pretty good passing chops, and I think paired with Scottie, that can thrive. We'll see how much of that is actually put to use in year one, but long term, I really love the fit between Grady, Scottie, and OG. The other sort of X factor with this team going into this season is going to be Dennis Schroeder and what role he plays when the season starts. We didn't get a chance to speak with Schroeder today at Media Day, but given some of the comments Darko had about him, they're going to put a lot of trust in him to initiate a lot of these actions for the team. Schroeder obviously isn't the pull-up shooter VanVleet is, so it'll be interesting to see how the Raptors incorporate him into an offense that has very little shooting around him. He's still bursty and quick, and it'll be interesting to see how much chemistry he develops with big man Jakob Poeltl as a pick-and-roll partner. He's also not a great finisher at the rim, much like Fred, so how they free things up for him will be interesting. And while Darko and him certainly have a connection, I'm sort of curious to see how that 0.5 offense works with Schroeder, who is a very meticulous player in his approach and at times can somewhat be a bit of a ball stopper on offense. That being said, there's no question what he brings to this team at the point of attack on defense. And I think if you're looking at positive areas for this team as it's currently constructed, the one thing that you can absolutely hang your hat on is the defense. With additions like Dick, Jalen McDaniels, Otto, and guys like Precious Achiuwa and Chris Boucher, the Raptors have a lot of length and athleticism that they can throw out into any given lineup. And that is going to help them force more turnovers, get out and running, and be a special transition team. And with cutting being emphasized in Darko's offense, I think athletes like Achiuwa, McDaniels, and Boucher can really thrive off of the ball. It really, again, just depends on the level of buy-in they have. Ultimately, it's going to be interesting to see if this Raptors team is the one we're looking at on opening night, and if it's the same one as we'll see in the final game of the year as well. Because with the way things were being said today, it doesn't feel like this is the final version of the team that is going to be put out there. Who knows if they re-engage in talks for Siakam or Anunoby or Trent. Regardless, this is a team that is mulling its options and has been, quite frankly, mulling its options for the last few seasons, unsure which direction to take. And while they certainly have tried to go after the Durants and Lillards of the world, it's unclear if that's really the direction they want to go, with youth and development being prioritized over pretty much everything else, including keeping your star player on the roster long term. And I think that's why this Raptors team is going to struggle this year. It's a roster that is lacking in a few departments, primarily shooting and creation, and is looking towards a 22-year-old to take helm of the most important position in basketball. There will be highlights, there will be bright moments, but ultimately, this feels like a bit of a transition year as they go from one phase to another. And I don't think that necessarily translates to more wins on the floor compared to last season. We can talk about selfishness all we want, we can talk about player development and what's being prioritized, but until a direction is picked and things become more clear, it's hard to get a read on where this team is actually headed in the immediate future. But let me know what you guys think. Let us know in the comments what you guys think the Raptors will do this season, where Siakam might land, etc., etc. And as always, subscribe to our channel for more NBA content. And as an aside, I wanted to let you guys know that I will not physically be at Raptors games this season, but I still will be providing you with game recaps every single morning after Raptors games to keep you updated on all things Toronto Raptors related. And I appreciate anybody who is going to tap in and follow the work. It should be very, very good to follow this team next season. Take care.